off. You go when you're ready.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's lovely to see you all. I am Mark Bonney, the Dean of Ely, and on behalf of the Cathedral community here, it's a great pleasure for us to be able to host this hustings this evening, and it's great to see so many of you here, not glued to the football, which could be going a little bit better, but I won't do any spoilers yet. I'm going to hand over to Lord Wilson, Richard Wilson, Lord Wilson of Dinton, who is chairing this evening. I'm hugely grateful to you, Richard, and even more grateful to all the candidates for being here. So thank you for coming. Thank you.
Good evening, and a very warm welcome in this amazing building. And it's a really good crowd, and I'm delighted so many people have come on what is an important occasion in our national life, and it shows democracy is still pretty active. As you heard, my name is Richard Wilson. I had the honour of being a public servant for 36 years. I've worked for ministers of all political persuasions, from Tony Benn to Margaret Thatcher and Tony Blair. And I really am non-political. I also sit as a crossbencher in the House of Lords. We have 8 candidates here tonight standing for election. We're lucky, very lucky, to have so many good people prepared to take on jobs which are really difficult and pretty thankless. And before we get going, I think we should give all 8 of them a round of applause for putting themselves forward. Now, let's get down to it. I'm going to now begin by asking each candidate to introduce themselves for 90 seconds, no more. And the candidates will be speaking in alphabetical order. You may notice that they're sitting in alphabetical order, and I'll ask them to speak in alphabetical order. And at the 90-second point, the microphone will cut out. Not my discretion, it'll cut out. Just to add. So all through the evening, we're going to have 90-second sessions with the microphone cutting out. After we've finished the introductions, I will go to the first person to ask a question. We've had over 100 questions, and clearly there's not time to ask them all. So we've grouped them into a number of groups and chosen one question from each group, which is roughly typical of what the group is about. And then when the questioner's asked it, I will call on the 8 candidates in random order, different order each time. We've got randomized lists to speak again for 90 seconds with the microphone cutting off. I hope that's clear. I hope you enjoy the event and find it useful. Really let's do it in a spirit of good manners and not abuse. We've got security laid on, but let's not worry about that. Let's have a really useful evening, which is at a very important time. I intend to remain seated. If I stood up, I'd want everyone to sit down, but I hope I won't have to do that. I would like to thank the Dean, who's hidden, and Chapter for their work in allowing this to happen. It's an amazing setting, and they've set us up brilliantly. So on that basis, I'd like to start by inviting Charlotte Kane from the Liberal Democrats to introduce herself. Charlotte, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming tonight, and to those of you who are watching at home. And thank you to the hundreds of people who've shared your hopes and concerns with me and with my canvassing team. I've lived in Reach, which is near Burwell, for about 30 years, and I've brought up my family here. Ely and East Cambridgeshire is a really great place to live, but it's showing the strains of years of Conservative chaos. Our roads are falling apart, our schools are struggling, people wait too long for health appointments, there are no dentists taking on new NHS patients, sewage is being spilled into our rivers, food bank use has increased, over 3,000 of our neighbours' children are living in poverty, and our young adults struggle to afford a home of their own, with mortgages and rents being out of reach of people on average incomes. This Thursday, we have our chance to change that. I'm standing to be our MP to clean up our rivers and protect our environment, properly fund our NHS and our social care services, and address the cost of living. A vote for me is a vote for a fair deal for everyone in Ely and East Cambridgeshire.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. Andy Cogan for the Green Party.
I'm Andy Cogan. I'm the Green Party. We want Britain to be as happy, wealthy and healthy as the Scandinavians we were once. We Greens are honest in saying that to reach that fairer, greener, better place, we need to have Scandinavian levels of wealth tax. Only that will fix the divided, unequal and run-down Britain we have become. We've had 40 years of American-inspired, privatised, deregulate policies. The consequence, millions in poverty, millions using food banks, millions on NHS waiting lists. No NHS dentists, millions of potholes, human waste flooding our streets, our ditches, our seas, E. coli and typhoid in the water, wildlife under threat as never before, and huge wealth and inequality divides. The top man at Tesco gets 9.3 million last year. The average pay in Tesco is 21,000. Is that fair as a differential? There's a beggar man in Ely, he's 43, white, single, multiple problems, health, mental health, can't get work, can't get a bed, lives without hope, in despair. Is this what we've become? What would Jesus do in Parliament? Tax cuts for the wealthiest? Benefits cuts for the poor? That's what our MP does day in, day out. Greens will give parishes, towns and district councils the power to say no to inappropriate housing and land developments and become enablers again.
Thank you very much. Ryan Coogan.
Hello, and thank you everyone for being here and the kind invitation that I was given. I'm Ryan Coogan. I've lived here for 35 years, attended the Weatherall School, later Soham Village College, before attending Hills Road in Cambridge. My children attend Millfields Primary School in Littleport and more recently Cottenham Village College and Waterbeach Primary. Working on a farm, driving a tractor from 8 and having worked in various industries including farming, retail, e-commerce, marketing, biotech, logistics and green energy power stations, I have a wide knowledge of life, values, ups and downs and can call on that vast, diverse range of skills in my working life. I have also turned to philanthropy and prefer direct action. I chaired an action group which saved a school from closure. Being vice chair of a local council, as chair of the finance committee, I found cost savings to freeze council tax burden for 2 years, helping the poorest in society. I've driven through improvements on the A10 where 2 people died, where the MP couldn't even be bothered to help, and highways didn't meet the criteria. Since then, I'm not aware of any accidents at the junction, let alone deaths. I'm also a local water bailiff working alongside the police, environment agency and angling trust to ensure our rivers are not polluted, are clean and the illegal activity such as pollution is evidenced and dealt with by holding polluters to account. However, big their legal prowess. I've also been a church treasurer for a Diocese of Ely Church and been a campanologist locally. Having been supported and told that I must stand to become an MP, it makes me no greater pleasure than...
Thank you very much. Lucy. You are a good audience. Lucy Fraser.
It's been an absolute honour and privilege to have been your MP for the past 9 years. I've worked with many people in this room and outside of this room to save the Princess of Wales Hospital, to ensure that we got that bypass built, to reopen the station in Soham, as well as safeguard those bus routes across the constituency. I've spent my whole career, whether that's the almost 2 decades as a barrister or the last 9 years as your MP, standing up for others and making sure that your voice gets heard. I know that some people are frustrated with the Conservatives. I understand that frustration. But I would ask you to remember what's happened in the last few years. We've had COVID, pandemic. We've also had a war in Ukraine. And through that period, the Conservative government stood up and supported everyone across the country. It would be my absolute honour and privilege to continue to serve each and every single one of you. And I would ask you to consider one question as you listen to us this evening and as you vote next Thursday. I would ask you to consider, who do you think can stand up for you, for what you care about locally and nationally, and get your voice heard?
Thank you very much. Hooray, Henry. The floor is yours.
Thank you, my lord. Evening all. A warning first. Not everything I'm going to say tonight will be or is intended to be funny. Yes, as loonies, and well before Ed Davey caught on, we combine fun, stunts, and satire with policies reflecting our national sense of humour, but with a vital message. The only wasted vote is one that isn't used. It should be the job of every one of us standing to ensure that I get 0 votes. Sadly, I believe I will get votes, and that's a sad indictment of our political system. Now, Elizabeth, my father was not a tool maker, but he was a tooth remaker. An NHS consultant in children's dentistry, he taught students to treat kids, and he considers that his crowning achievement. I've lived in Witcham since 2006, so in about another 30 years I'm maybe a local. Fundamentally, our party exists to ensure a full and proper democracy that everyone can participate in. So if, as one of our constituents said, you don't want any of the usual party clowns, then I'm here, an out and proud loony for you to vote for. And as Howling Lord Hope, our leader, says, if you want none of the above or don't usually vote, vote unusually. Vote loony.
Thank you. Elizabeth McWilliams.
Imagine a country where everything works as it should. Living standards up rather than down. Crime solved rather than unsolved. Ambulances that arrive. Schools that aren't crumbling around our children's ears. Our waters free of sewage. Mortgage and food prices not going through the roof. There's a clear choice at this election. More chaos with the Tories, or stability with a mission-led government by a changed Labour Party with a serious long-term plan to change Britain. And I want to be our local MP to bring hope and change. I've lived in this constituency for 20 years now. My children went to our excellent local state schools, and I've relied on the same public services as you. I'm chair of Lambbeach Parish Council, where I've helped give a voice to residents. I've solved problems our district councillors have said were too difficult. And I've campaigned on local bus services and a dangerous A10 junction. As your MP, I will be easy to contact, act decisively on issues, and be visible in our area. I'll be in the service of residents. I've listened to the concerns of so many voters on the doorstep. The cost of living crisis, NHS access, underinvestment in our roads, the list goes on. I hope you'll give me your support. Change is possible, but you have to vote for it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Obi Moni.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, my lord, and my fellow candidates. I am Obina Monye. Please call me Obi. I wear a lot of hats. I'm a writer, I'm an artist, I'm also a model and a poet. I am running to be your representative in Parliament. Why am I running? I believe the system needs an update. I want it to reflect your voice. I would like it to reflect your voice. So I will be consulting you on how I will be voting in Parliament. I will stay in consultation with you all the time. That is how I intend to work in this situation. So your input makes makes everything possible. Your input will reflect how I vote. So please, think about it and give me a vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And finally, Rob Rawlins.
Hi, thank you for coming, everyone. I'm Rob Rawlins, and I and my wife live in Waterbeach. I'm an independent candidate in the Vote Life network with a single issue, abortion. We want to repeal the 1967 Abortion Act, under which 10 million babies have died. Our motives are to protect babies and to help women harmed by abortions. An abortion is only successful if the baby dies. Is it a baby? Yes. See how mums and dads proudly show ultrasound pictures. The woman, the NHS says it's just a simple medical procedure. Medically, yes. Emotionally, no. Years of regret, loss, guilt can follow. It's just ending a pregnancy. Hey, come clean, NHS. It ends the life of a baby. We want reparations for women harmed by abortion. In conclusion, Mahatma Gandhi said, "The measure of civilization of a society is how we treat our most vulnerable."
Thank you very much. It's clear that we're going to have some really interesting discussion in the next hour and a half, beginning with Mike Tyson, who's sitting there on the south side in the front row, who's going to ask his question. Mike,
good evening. Child poverty has reached 4.3 million. That's almost 30% of all our children. And 7 out of 10 of those children's parents are in work. And these are the figures provided by the Child Poverty Action Group. These children are the future of our country. I have 2 questions, really. One is, how can one of the richest countries in the world allow this to happen? And secondly, how do you think our next government can solve this enormous problem? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to call on our 8 candidates in random order to give their responses each in 90 seconds, beginning with Obi Moni.
Thank you, my lord. Child poverty is an issue that is well documented all over the world. I mean, I remember the campaign of Make Poverty History years ago, which I was involved in as a student. Now, the solution to that requires input of several organizations, a lot of organizations. So that means we have to be in consultation with all these organizations, which include the international bodies, the international organizations, the NGOs that are down on the ground. These organizations have first-hand knowledge of what needs to happen in that regard. But we need to be able to consult them and harness that information. And one more thing, does anyone in the audience have a solution to this problem? Please give me a hand. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. We move on to Rob Rawlins, independent.
Okay, picking up the wording of the question, these children are the future of our country. Just to give you a statistic, in the last year, approximately 650,000 babies were born and 250,000 babies were aborted. So 1/4 of babies in the womb who are part of the future of our country don't get there. So it's a moral question of the highest order. In our history, we've had a moral question of similar scale, slavery. So we were a leading country in slavery, and then over about 3 or 4 decades, the campaigners in Parliament and in society gradually changed, and so in 1837 we abolished slavery in that we freed all the slaves. So I appeal to candidates who might get into Parliament, unlike me, to think of the future of this country and the babies that could live, and to undo a great moral outrage.
Thank you. Move on to Hooray Henry, the official monster raving loony party. Henry.
Thank you. Clearly a very serious topic, and I'm not going to try to be funny in any way. We need as a nation to understand why we're in the situation. The question that you asked her, absolutely. We need to understand why. We also need to understand what that poverty means and what the relativity of that poverty is, so that we know where best we can target what will always be limited funds. So it's an important thing for us to remember that, where we are today is better than where we have been, but it can be better still. What I want to guard against, and I guess the nearest to being funny I'm going to get, is the Garrison Keillor point about Lake Wobegon, where all the children are above average. We can't have everybody above average, but we ought to be able to improve what that average means and also narrow the range either side of it. How do we do that? Well, we have a loony approach to life. We think we should have coordination across departments in government and actually integrate them. Let's move around 90 degrees and stop thinking about fighting for resource and think about deploying it for everybody's benefit.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to invite Lucy Fraser, Conservative and Unionist Party, to speak.
It's really important that we look after everyone in our society, and to help those with the least, we need to get the cost of living down. And we do that by tackling inflation. If we can get the prices of our goods, our food, our petrol, everything down, then we help those people who have the least. And that's what the Prime Minister and the government have done. Inflation was at 11%, and it's gone down to 2%. We also need to make sure that when you do get work, work pays. That's why we have continually supported increasing the national living wage, and we need to cut taxes, because what we want to do is ensure that when you earn money, you keep as much of your money as you can, whilst of course giving some to the government to support services. We need to ensure that people don't enter into poverty because they have the education that they deserve. That's why we need to improve people's skills, and that's why we need a first-class education for every single child across the country. And of course, for those who can't work, for those who struggle at school and who haven't got the skills, we need to continue to support the most vulnerable.
Thank you, Lucy. I now call on Charlotte Kane of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you for the question, and I'm sorry for the previous answer, which I think was horribly complacent. Child poverty is an absolute stain on our society. As I said in my opening remarks, tonight, over 3,000 children in this constituency alone will have gone to bed hungry. And I say gone to bed as a turn of phrase because some of them may not even have had a bed. They may not go to school tomorrow for the education that they need because they may not have shoes to wear to school tomorrow. It is an utter shame, and we need to address it. So how do we do that? Well, we need to make sure that everyone has decent housing, so we will build 150,000 new affordable houses every year. We need to remove the outrageous cap on benefits, where if you have more than 2 children, you don't get any further benefit for the further children. They are people. They need support. We will increase benefits generally, and we'll start paying benefit within a week of your claim, not make you wait for 5 weeks. We have to address this, and just changing the 2-child benefit cap will take at least $250,000.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I now call on Elizabeth McWilliams, Labour Party.
Thank you for asking this question, Mike.
There you are.
Food bank use is an absolute moral stain on our society, and here in Ely, demand is far outweighing the supply available. Donations are down by 50% in a cost of living crisis. The number of children in destitution in this country, and that's unable, their basic needs are unable to be met, that number has tripled since 2016. Labour have an ambitious strategy to reduce child poverty, working with voluntary sectors, faith organisations, businesses and local government. The last Labour government lifted 500,000 children and over 1 million pensioners out of poverty, and the next Labour government will build on that. We'll create more good jobs, and secure jobs are really at the heart of this. We need to get rid of the 0 hours contracts. We want, We'll help all families by reducing energy bills, moving away from expensive fossil fuels and embracing cheaper green energy. We'll make housing more affordable, expand access to childcare and support children by introducing free breakfast clubs in every school. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy Cogan, Green Party. Floor's yours.
We need Scandinavian taxes on the wealthy so we can transfer money from the rich to the poor to solve the problem. There are 14 million people in poverty in Britain. 3 million are children. Minimum income guarantees, having council houses being built again so that people have decent and affordable housing. In Scotland, they have social care that's free. Under the Greens, social care and childcare will be free at the point of use. The Trussell Trust said that in 2009-10, they gave out 40,000 food parcels. In 22-23, they gave out 3.1 million food parcels, 1.4 million to children. It's only by real taxation change you can switch enough money from the rich to the poor to end this abuse of young children. That's it.
Thank you. And finally, Ryan Coogan of Reform UK.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this is a story that you hear only more and more often in the constituency. And, you know, it's one what led me to actually want to stand for Parliament here. At the end of the day, good, honest, working people are even struggling to make ends meet. And Reform really have the biggest packages of all to support just those people. So, for example, you know, child benefits are not going to stop at 2 children because that 3rd child isn't important. No, we believe that the more children you have, the better it is for Britain. Looking at your personal tax situation, so having a tax situation which has been frozen on the personal allowance side for many, many years, that has actually dragged more and more people into an income tax situation, which is quite frankly not fair. What we're going to do is increase that burden off of young families, and we're going to put that at 20,000. Now that enables 2 working people to actually save £3,000 a year on their income tax. That tax can be used for the children. The tax that would have been just given to the government is actually something that can be now used for your own children. And in my belief that you'll be far better off using that tax for the benefit of yourself and your family than giving it to the government that are going to waste it.
Thank you. Right, I think we've given everyone a chance to talk about that very important topic of child poverty. Now I'm going to invite Stephen Whittier in the front row to ask his question. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Ely is in the midst of a dental health crisis. The only dentist I can use turned me to private as my only option the day I turned 18 2 years ago. And this is the situation that virtually everyone I know is in, and I can't afford it. What can be done?
Thank you, Stephen. Ely is in a dental health crisis. I'm going to invite Hooray Henry to be the first person to speak to that.
Thank you. This is very personal to me, as I said in my opening. My father was a dentist, particularly working with children. I think there are a number of things that we need to do. We need to provide supply. And I know a little further north from here in Peterborough, there's great pressure to try and get the new campus there from Anglia Ruskin to actually include a dental school. That for me would be great, but it's part of the solution. We need to have more dentists now. We also need to do something important, which is we need to think about prevention and education. We need to think about how we avoid you needing the dentist as often, and therefore how we take the pressure off. If my father was here, he would be saying, I don't want to take your tooth out. I don't want to fill it. I want you not to have the problem in the first place. So for me, we need to push and we need to get more dentists. That campus in Peterborough, the opportunity there is important. But as with so much across healthcare, prevention is so much better. So I want to do that and education at the same time.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Lucy Fraser, your turn.
Stephen, this is an issue that many people have raised with me locally, and you ask, what can we do about it? So I'll tell you what I've already done. I've raised it nationally with those in government, ministers, because this is actually a national issue as well as a local issue, and I've raised it with Jan Thomas, who's the chair who runs the health board here, and she has recently taken on the care for dentists. And the output of that, what we've achieved as a result of that is two things. First of all, we have a national plan. It's set out in our manifesto, but we've already started delivering it. We're going to create 2.5 million more appointments, and we're doing that by offering more to dentists to take up NHS work, because there's an issue that there are dentists that are just refusing to do NHS work, and we need to incentivise them to do that. I visited quite a lot of dentists locally, and what they tell me also is there's a training problem here. Because people don't train locally, they don't start to work locally, and it's something that I want to continue to look at. And finally, the local element of that. So I'm working with Jan very closely. I get regular updates from her. She tells me that she also has a local plan to solve this. It's not going to change overnight, but she's confident that with our support, she can get the dentist appointment that you deserve.
Thank you. Thank you. Obi Moni. What can be done about the Ely dental health crisis?
Thank you, my lord. The pressure on dentists at the moment is inexplicable. When I asked my dentist, why is it that you're under so much pressure? And his response was more was about the system. So we need to find out more about what it is that is making the system so high pressured and forcing the costs to rise. So this is something that we would have to do, consult and find out how we can deal with this issue to address the cost issues here. Stephen, just like you, I have to pay for a dentist too. So I try as much as possible to avoid going to a dentist because I know it will cost me quite a lot. So what I've done is try and cut out the biscuits, the sugars, so that I don't visit the dentist at all. So these are things that we could do practically, but also we need to consult and find out how we can, drive the costs down. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm now going to ask Andy Cogan of the Green Party.
It's quite simple. We need to raise the taxes that are raised to raise what we give to dentists. I talked to Jacob, my last NHS dentist before COVID 4 years ago. He was packing up to go back to Poland. Why, I said? He said, because it's quite simple. The tariff, what the government pays for services, doesn't cover the cost of the services. Therefore, dentists are opting out of doing NHS work. It's quite simple. He also said, as a tip, he said, if you're waiting for an NHS dentist, you'll wait forever. I suggest you get the softest brush you can find and brush your teeth as gently as you can and eat nothing that might crack your teeth. My daughter-in-law recently spent £600 fixing a cracked tooth. Money she could scarcely afford. She works at Adam Brooks. She also said things like, how come you pensioners got 10% as a pay increase, we got 5%? I had no answer to that one, but we can ask the government. She's here, she can tell us how it happened. But that's what we have to do. We have to raise the amount of money we spend on our services and give the money so that more dentists can be encouraged to do more work. I've heard the same from doctors as well. Lots of NHS doctors do not do more than one session a week for the NHS. That's the minimum you do as a consultant because they get more money treating the private sector first, and that means we have a two-tier health service. If you pay, you get the treatment today. If you wait, I've been waiting 2.5 years for cancelled appointments at Adam Brooks for a follow-up. That's what it's become under this government that she is part of. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Rob Rawlins, what are we going to do about Ely dental health crisis?
I don't know. So I know the problem. We've moved from London and we've kept our dentist over there. This doesn't impinge on my special focus platform, so pass.
Thank you. Elizabeth McWilliams.
Stephen. The most common reason for children aged 5 to 9 to be admitted to hospital is rotting teeth. So I echo what Hooray has said, and I'm sure we'll both speak about this more generally, that we need to really focus on prevention. And one of the ways that Labour will do that is with supervised toothbrushing in school for children aged 3 to 5. We do need more dentist appointments in the system, and Labour will introduce 700,000 more urgent appointments. But in order to do that, we need to recruit and we need to retain the staff. And the fact that there is this dental desert here, that should be a trigger for us to say, well, this is where we specifically need people. So we need to get more joined up by identifying where these gaps are and working to fill them better. Sorry for the pun.
Okay, thank you very much. Ryan Coogan, your turn.
Again, it's another example where Britain is broken. Britain is broken, it needs fixing, it needs reform. It's absolutely ridiculous to not have an NHS availability here in Ely, or in the rest of East Cambridgeshire, or even in the country. And the fundamental issue is not that of personnel. The dentists are here in the country. It's actually because of finances. Why would a dentist want to work for a pittance? And essentially, as an NHS dental operator, that is what you are doing. So the capacity that dental operator does is actually moves across to the private sector, and you can pay extra money, pay the amount of money that the dentist feels is right and just, to actually get seen by the same dentist that historically you would have had on the NHS. And it goes along to the same lines, really, that we need to actually make dental work in the NHS. And that's something that I can do with reform.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Charlotte Kane.
Thank you for your question, Stephen. I'm sorry you haven't been able to get an NHS dentist. Unfortunately, you're one of many, and when I've been out canvassing, I've heard some terrible tales of people either having to spend their savings in order to get the treatment they need, or remain in significant pain with whatever is causing the problem getting steadily worse because they don't have the savings with which to pay. It's a serious problem and it needs to be addressed. Unfortunately, it started when the Labour Party changed the dental contracts. They were told that it would not be workable and they carried on regardless. And then the Conservatives haven't changed it, and we've just heard that despite being our MP for 9 years, they've only just started looking at it. So we'd review the contracts to make sure that we bring more dentists back into the NHS so that everyone can have an NHS dentist, everyone can get an appointment. As people have said, prevention is important too, so we'd remove VAT on children's toothbrushes and toothpaste, and the free school meals will give people healthy food, which will also lead to healthy teeth.
Thank you, Stephen. I hope you found that helpful discussion. Move on now to our third question from Sami Sharma, who's standing up there now. Sami, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. As we witness the ongoing humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, with over 37,000 Palestinians, mostly women and children, killed, and millions displaced, fearing for their lives, what are your thoughts on the Israeli government's disregard for international laws, the ICJ, and UN resolutions calling for humanitarian aid and an immediate ceasefire to prevent further ethnic cleansing?
Thank you. We had a lot of questions on that. Can we move to Elizabeth McWilliams? Ask Elizabeth McWilliams to speak first.
I'm very clear, as is the Labour Party, we want to see an immediate ceasefire in the Middle East, release of all hostages, and starting to uphold international law. There needs to be a rapid increase in aid, and Labour are committed to recognising the Palestinian state, because we can't have a two-state solution if one of those is not recognised.
Thank you. Lucy Fraser.
The events since October the 7th have been extremely devastating, and it's really important that we work to resolve the situation in Gaza and in the Middle East. We want to work towards a sustainable ceasefire. We've set out a number of conditions for that, which includes the release of the hostages as well as the formation of a new government, and we want to ensure that we have a two-state solution and help ensure peace and stability for everyone in the region.
Thank you. Ryan Coogan.
All war is a terrible, terrible thing, and people forget that there's actually people dying, in these far-flung places. And it's getting closer and closer to Europe. What I feel, quite strongly about is everybody should get around a table and discuss their issues, and create the ceasefire that is so desperately needed. And if that, takes, again, the Qatari consulate to actually come and actually create that ceasefire, it absolutely needs to happen for this war and other wars. And it needs to happen yesterday, not today. So I can only encourage all of the various parties as part of this to get around that table, discuss your differences, reach across those divides and actually stop the mass slaughter that is currently going on in the region.
Thank you. Hooray, Henry, your turn.
Thank you, my lord. Thank you for the question. I'm going to make a brave guess that you're going to get a fair amount of unanimity from this platform, and I'm not going to disturb that unanimity. All sides need to abide by the law. All sides need to think about the value of human life. All sides need to talk and find a resolution that works and that will work in the long term, not the short term. So I think I can't put it better than anybody else on the platform so far. We need to get there.
Thanks. Thank you. Obi Moni, what do you think?
Thank you, my lord. Shami, conflict is never favorable in any place at all. So we need to redefine education. What is the purpose of education? Is it to protect? Is it to create? Certainly not to destroy. So we need to redefine education and also pass that down to the children who are growing up so that they understand what education is about. So the purpose of education is to create and protect. Obviously, in this case, it's not happening in that way. So once again, we'll now put that out to everybody in consultation. What do we do to ensure that this does not continue? Thank you.
Thank you. Charlotte Kane, your turn.
The bombardment in Gaza is beyond appalling. Seeing so many people killed and injured, children orphaned, it is unacceptable. There has to be a ceasefire, and it has to be as soon as possible. Frankly, I would drop all conditions in order to get a ceasefire. Once we've got a ceasefire, we can start talking about what next. But we have to stop the killing. We have to get the food convoys in. We have to get the medicine in. We have to help those people survive. In the longer term, we need to recognise the Palestinian state. We need to stop immediately we need to stop selling arms to Israel. And we need to recognise and uphold international law. What has been going on in Gaza, on the face of it, it appears to be against international law, and those people must be brought to trial, and action needs to be taken. But first of all, we need to get that ceasefire and stop people being killed.
Thank you, Charlotte. Rob Rawlins, your turn.
And saying the carnage of war is awful. Sani Sharma, you mentioned 37,000 killed. Sadly, the human heart and wanting more than you've got, going up to nations, and war is part of the human condition, historically, now. We can't stop war, and I applaud every attempt to stop this war and future wars and other wars, but let's put it in context. Charlotte just said, let's stop the killing of babies in the womb. The context is the World Health Organization figures are 73 million babies aborted every year. The biggest war recently, World War II, was 50 million killed in 6 years. So we should do all we can to stop war, but actually wars will always be. But we can do something to stop the killing of babies in the womb. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we've now finished 8 questions on that. Thank you very much. You haven't had a go. Sorry, my fault. Your go. Sorry?
Is that going through? Yeah. Like Lib Dems, we would recognise the two-state solution.
My fault.
Like everyone else who's spoken, 37,000 Palestinians killed, 2,000 Israelis killed. To me, when the Israelis blow up a block of flats and they kill 2 Hamas fighters but 90 others die, it's murder. All this killing is murder. It's a sin. It can be forgiven, I think. We're in a church where Christianity preaches forgiveness and this sort of thing, but we're nowhere near that state, are we? So the issue is it a crime? And is it a war crime? Is it genocide? Is it Holocaust? I'm not a lawyer. These are legal terms and legal definitions about what can be done internationally to deal with these things. But both sides are nowhere near ready for peace as I can see it, and that will just create, I think, generations of anger and resentment that will be very difficult to solve. A very good friend of mine, her father was he was a Quaker at the United Nations who was called in to do lots of peace brokerage between Palestinians and Israelis. You cannot do it until they're ready to do it. And the current Israeli government is not ready to stop killing people. And Hamas responds. It's sad, and we have to live with that until it starts to find a way through to something else and something better. So I'm sorry, there's no answers, but I'll stop there.
Thank you. My apologies, Andy. Now we move on to the fourth question from Anne Irwin, who's just getting the microphone now. But I hope, Sammy, you thought those are helpful answers. Anne, your go.
Thank you. For the first time on record, global warming has exceeded the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold for a whole year, and the UK has seen unprecedented extremes of heat and rainfall over the last 2 years. Do you feel that there is a climate emergency, and what are your main priorities for actions to tackle climate change?
Thank you for that question. Ryan Coogan, would you like to be the first person?
Thank you very much for the question. And a while ago, this has been going on now for a while and getting worse. And certainly in the media, we continue to hear of the CO2 emissions that are causing this global climate emergency. I take a slightly different view. Personally, I've done some numbers on deforestation. And actually, for me, the numbers are more correlatable with deforestation than actually too much production of CO2. Trees do a wonderful thing for the planet. And obviously, trees are being cut down off of the planet, as is vegetation. And in primary school geography, you are taught this, that if you don't have vegetation and heat, you have a desert, and a desert is no good. What we are doing as a party is we're scrapping the net zero carbon dioxide measures, but that's for the economic benefit of the country. We don't at any point believe that there isn't an emergency, and for me, we need to look at tree planting, we need to stop deforestation around the world, because the numbers exactly correlate to the extra moisture, the extra heat, and the extra CO2 in the air.
Thank you. Obi Moni, your go.
Thank you, my lord. As a student of physics, climate change was an emergency 20 years ago. So, but the thing is that it wasn't taken seriously. But today, it's actually coming up with the physical signs that you see on a daily basis, just like you said, the 1.5 degrees carbon threshold. So we need to get into a discussion. The issues involved here are, example, if we have to put it out to the public and ask, do we continue to extract oil from the ground, or do we leave the oil in the ground? Issues like this needs to be addressed. So we need to vote on it because it has an impact on our lives. The cost implications of each of these positions is going to impact our pocket, and that is one of the reasons why things haven't moved on quickly. So we need a robust discussion on climate change so that people are less anxious about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy Cogan. Sorry, Andy Cogan, your turn.
My turn, is it? Right, thanks. Yeah, on climate change, it's a major issue for us Green Party thinks. We have lots of ideas. I mean, one of the major things that's going to happen is things like flooding and sea levels rising. And flooding is down to the water companies. We need them to, because there's much more wetter winters and much more water, there's much more foul water, and that means there's much more outfall flow and all sorts of chemicals then leach onto the land, into the water, into the seas, causing problems like that. So we have to reduce that. We have to get Anglia Water to spend the money on building up our capacity to deal with climate change because it's real and it's happening. My house is 1/2 metre above sea level, and that's the other big threat in the decades to come. If the sea level rises, I'll have to find somewhere else to live. But rather than that, I'd much rather we ended fossil fuel use, we planted more trees, we got into rewilding, we stopped doing the damage we're doing to all the species that are finding it much harder to live in these changed climates. Half of Britain's wild plants, for instance, are under stress. The numbers are declining. I can give figures like all the different things that are under, like a 60% decline in flying insects in the last 20 years. These things are measurable. Scientists look at the figures, tell us what's happening, and we have governments that do nothing about it.
Rob Rawlins, your turn.
God made a beautiful earth, and we all love to look at the sea, the sky, the scenery, and he gave man the right to rule over it and the responsibility to care for it. So I applaud all the measures that people are talking about to care for the environment, and that's it.
Thank you. Lucy Fraser, your turn.
Of course, the climate is one of the most important issues that we need to address. But I think we should take a step back and we should look at what we have actually already achieved, what the UK government has already achieved in this space. Because we were the first country to legislate for a net zero target, and we are the first major economy to have cut our emissions by 50% already. And we've done that. We've done that by diversifying the way we get our energy. So we, in the UK, are the producer of we have the top 5 wind farms here in the UK producing the most electricity. 50% of our electricity is produced by renewable sources. We're investing heavily in technologies such as modular nuclear reactors, as well as continuing to invest in hydrogen, as well as continuing to invest in wind farms. We need to continue to do all that, but we need to do more. And the more that we need to do is lead the way internationally. Because whilst we're doing quite a lot, it doesn't really matter what we do when other countries are not pulling their weight. So we need to continue what we did in Paris and continue to lead the international charge on this very, very important issue.
I now call on Elizabeth McWilliams.
Thanks, Anne. I'm incredibly worried about climate change. I'm worried about the planet my children will have to live on. It's by far the biggest challenge we face globally. And the difference between the Conservatives and Labour is that Labour see tackling climate change as a positive opportunity to tackle the cost of living crisis as well and create good jobs. The Conservatives' ban on new onshore wind, failure to build new nuclear power stations, and the decision to scrap investment in home insulation has landed British families with amongst the highest energy bills in Europe. And we will harness clean, green power to boost our energy security and invest in home insulation upgrades, saving families hundreds of pounds on their bills. But we'll provide leadership so we can influence others in other countries to play their part in meeting our collective global obligations to future generations. So we'll double onshore wind, triple solar power and quadruple offshore wind by 2030. We'll invest in carbon capture and storage, hydrogen and marine energy, and insulate 5 million homes. And we'll create a national wealth fund to partner with government, with private investment, so we can build that new technology and create good jobs. And we'll also tackle the nature emergency, including the unforgivable pollution of our rivers and seas, improving access to nature, promoting biodiversity, and protecting our landscapes and wildlife.
Charlotte Kane, your turn.
Yes, I'm afraid there is a climate emergency, and yet we've just heard the Conservative candidate say it doesn't really matter what we do here, and we see the Conservative government giving more oil and gas licences. It absolutely does matter what we do here. Here in Ely and East Cambs, we have some of the worst insulated homes in the country, and the country has some of the worst insulated homes in Europe. So the Liberal Democrats would do a lot to improve insulation in homes, give people grants where appropriate, give people loans where appropriate, give them support so they know what the best form of insulation is for their house and that they get it installed by reliable people. We'd also encourage more green energy. I'm an honorary director of Reach Community Solar Farm, and we'd like to see more of those community solar farms and wind farms, more solar panels on roofs, not great huge solar farms like the planned one at Sunica. And also here we need to address the issue of carbon in peat. We are releasing carbon daily by the way we're using our peat, and we need to make sure that we keep that carbon captured in the peat.
Hooray, Henry, you're the last one. Off you go.
Thank you, my lord. Thank you. Well, 26 million tonnes of waste plastic bottles are discarded every year in the UK, of which only 45% are recycled. The official Looney Party has an answer: stop making them. Before you ask, we also have an alternative. It's called glass. And those of you of a certain age will remember that glass bottles used to be worth something when you took them back to the shops. Now, the environment needs attention. On fly tipping, we're going to ban the tipping of all flies, insects and zips of any kind. I'm going to be pushing for an upgrade to Active Travel England, to become much more Active Travel England. We've even got a new slogan for them. Oi, mate, on your bike.
Thank you very much. Well now, thank you for those answers. We've had 4 pretty important, intense topics so far: child poverty, dental health, Israel, climate change. And you are doing really well listening. But we're going to change direction now to a very interesting question. Local. We're going to go local to Joe Bryant, who's got a question for you.
Good evening. I am a new resident in the north of Ely in one of the many new developments in the area. The lack of public facilities in this area is evident, with no shop to even buy essential items within a 30-minute walk. What will the candidates do to ensure citizens in the north of Ely have easier access to shops and other facilities?
Good question. Thank you very much. First person to be invited to respond is Charlotte Kane.
Thank you for that question, Joe. We've had a lot of development in and around Ely, and much of it, I'm afraid, doesn't have the infrastructure that it should have had. What can we do to help that now? One of the things is we can hold the developers to the commitments that they made at the time. So some of it is about making sure that they put in place the active travel links, the cycle paths, the pedestrian paths, so that you can more easily get to the town centre. Going forward, we need to look at how the whole development process works, and we need to say to builders that when you're making a major development, you need to make sure that people can access what they need, and that you do put in provision for building those resources. If you have large numbers of people moving into an area, they should at the very least have a corner shop, as well as a playground, as well as green space. And so that needs to be built in, and it's one of the weaknesses of the district council that they have a very out-of-date local plan, and therefore they don't have strong enough provisions in there to make sure that these things are put in place when the developer comes for permission.
Thank you, Charlotte. I now invite Elizabeth McWilliams to say her bit about this.
Thank you, Joe. Yes, you're not alone in bringing this up. It comes up on the doorstep a lot. I live near Waterbeach, and it's been a big concern for the residents moving into houses there that they'll see a repeat of what happened in Northstowe. And there are many brilliant things, I think, that people who live in the new development at Northstowe would say about it, but access to vital infrastructure is not one of them. It does now have a pub after some time, but for years there's not been anywhere to even buy a pint of milk. And we need to learn from this. We need to do better, and it's why Labour has put in its manifesto that we must have infrastructure first. And we need to build houses. We need to build more houses, good quality houses. We need to build much more social and affordable housing, and all of these things are important. We've got to get the infrastructure in first. We should be looking at using brownfield sites ahead of greenfield ones, and releasing some of the grey belt to do that. And then we need to build really excellent housing, and as you say, with access to good transport, and those things, the facilities that residents need. And I think this is the access to transport is a real problem in this area. We're building too many car-dependent environments, and I really welcome Labour's commitment to give more powers to the community regarding bus franchising.
Thank you. I do think the candidates are doing really well in keeping to 90 seconds. It's very impressive. They have no idea what they were going to be asked, and they've managed to come up with answers in the correct time. Andy Cogan, would you like to give... It's your turn now.
Righto. I was asked to do something similar from the local paper. Ely Standard were asking about how can we encourage more businesses into Ely and this sort of thing. And I was looking at the costs of setting up a business in Ely. In the Ely High Street, there are two shops. One is $25,000 a year rent, one is $65,000 a year rent. You think that's the start? On top of that, rates will be the same. On top of that, you've got stock. On top of that, you've got staff. So unless you drastically cut the amount you charge in rent or rates, small businesses cannot get started. And I've talked to a young man who lived in Wilburton, and he said his day is he gets a bus from Wilburton to Ely Station, goes to Cambridge, works for a day, repeats the journey coming back. He gets there, the village is closed. And it's too small a community to generate enough business for private shopkeepers to do it. You can go for community ownership, though. Communities can say, what do we as our village or community need? Can we raise money through the parish? Is there land or a place we could go? I'm a shareholder in a community bakery. We all pay £25 to be shareholders in it, and that's raising money to try and get a community bakery. But that's in Scotland. No one's offering to do a bakery where I live. Up where it's so small, we have one bus on a Thursday. It goes into Ely Market. 2 hours later, it comes back. The infrastructure just isn't there. I'm waiting for the new bike route that will open between Soham and Wicken so I can get to Soham's new station. There's all sorts of things where we need joined up thinking. And we as a party want to give...
Thank you very much. Rob Rawlings, your turn.
Again, I know the value of this. My wife doesn't drive, and so back in London there were buses like this, but here in Ely, not Waterbeach, not so many. So I know the difficulties, but this is not online with my pro-abortion, pro-life thing, so pass.
Thank you. Lucy Fraser, your turn.
At a big picture level, it's a big picture level. It's really important to ensure that you as a community decide what you need in terms of infrastructure, and that's why we're changing and have changed the housing plan, the local plan, so that when you do get building, you should have a say in what infrastructure comes in terms of supporting the housing that you are getting. In terms of just thinking about what we've already got and what we fought for locally already, we have got some great facilities. I helped the Mill in Soham, the fantastic Viva Arts Centre, get a huge amount of funding to open. I'm helping a campaign group get a skate park in Ely and a splash pad in Ely, and have lobbied for many cycle routes across the constituency. East Cambs has delivered you a youth club. East Cambs District Council has delivered you a youth club in Littleport, as well as a leisure centre. And of course, recently we had that leisure centre opened in Ely as well. But we can do more. And Andy mentioned community ownership funds, and we as the government are putting more money into community ownership funds, i.e. you can buy assets within your community if they're about to close. And a final thing I want to say on behalf of East Cambs District Council, who's done a fantastic job of keeping the free parking in Ely to ensure that those shops remain sustainable, and I will fully support them to continue to do that.
Hooray, Henry, your go.
Thank you. It's another great question. You're really testing us tonight. I think from my perspective, this is an example of the disconnection that we see. So the answer has to be partly an integrated approach that draws together planning and much broader thinking around transport, energy and lots of other strategies. While we know that something that involves utilising 3 or more government departments working together with councils is totally loony, that's rather why we like it. Locally, there are some interesting ideas. There are things happening that may actually help things come to you rather than you have to go to the shops. I'm thinking, for example, of the bike delivery firm down the road in Cambridge, Zedify, who is breaking what I might call the polycarbonate ceiling in order to try and get delivery much better. Apart from that, I believe that councils should be able to designate high streets as free trade zones, where, in the words of the song, there'll be no income tax, no VAT, no money back, and no guarantee. Similarly, we want to provide subsidies to coffee shops and cafe owners to employ former MPs and PMs, teaching them what service really means.
Thank you for that. Ryan Coogan, your go.
Yeah, totally, see where you're coming from. And from my point of view, when I look at the same problem, is this the speedy development of housing and then the lack of accountability afterwards that's actually the issue? And planners, they just don't hold these companies to account when they haven't built these quality buildings that they were supposed to build in the process. But also because they're having to find the sites and put the houses up so quickly after planning, are these things really properly thought out? And as we speed through the planning process to put these houses up, the question is that it's not going to get any better. All of the developments, and it goes really back to the immigration thing, that whilst we're pedaling a bicycle on a turbo train, we're not going anywhere. And really, we need a few years of where the net migration figure is allowed to stabilise around 0 in order to actually get back up with the housing building, actually put those services back into place, have that money to do that, and actually get people into good paid jobs, working with decent amounts of income tax allowances so that you can have the extra money in your pocket to aid that social mobility so that when you get home of an evening you can choose what you want to do. And that's really, where I come from on this.
Thank you, Ryan. Obi Moan, your go.
Once again, Joe, from observation of the new build and the properties, I certainly observed that there were no shops just by living in one within a 30 minutes, not in most of them. So this is something to do with the design of these new builds. So certainly what we would do is, in consultation with the residents, we would put up like a tender opportunities to provide the services that are required within that area. Say, for instance, you wanted a shop or a leisure center, anything that would boost the area in itself. I know that the buildings at the moment, the estates at the moment, they have great facilities, but sometimes they are limited. So in consultation with the residents, once again, we would find opportunities for tender to provide the services through the council. That's how we're going to be dealing with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Right, that's the fifth question. We're now moving on to the sixth question, which I think is a googly, which I'm really looking forward to the answers to. It comes from Bishop Dagmar Winter, the acting Bishop of Ely, who's got the microphone. Over to you.
Thank you. There are many things which would be good and in which we as a country could fruitfully invest. However, since funds are not infinite, there are choices to be made. Can candidates tell us, please, what they would not fund or fund to a significantly lesser degree?
Thank you very much. Lucy Fraser.
I knew you were going to come to me first.
It's entirely random.
We're a party who believes that actually you should keep as much money as you earn as possible. Of course, we look after the most vulnerable. So what I would say is that we're a party who trusts people to spend their money responsibly and well. And that's why we've set out a series of tax cuts in our manifesto. And they're tax cuts for working people to ensure that when you won't be paying national insurance on the money that you earn. We will also, there are tax cuts for pensioners as well. I would say, to put the question slightly more positively, I think that education is one of the most important things that we can invest in as a country. I think it's important that we ensure that our young people have the skills, the confidence, the ability to grow up into amazing adults who contribute to society as a whole. So I think investing in education is important, and then when people have those skills, when they get those jobs, I think it's important that we trust them to give to charity and to look after others, but we don't take as much money away from them as other people on this panel may do.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving on, hooray, Henry, your go.
That's a good one. What would we not fund? That's a very long list. We would not fund holding innocent prisoners in prisons. We'd probably let them go. We would, thank you, we would not fund areas such as, I'm trying to think how best to put this. Lots of politicians. So we would be looking at the cost of the House of Commons. I would remind everybody that we have a policy that we will do a full 5-year term in between 3 and 4 years. That will save a fortune for starters. And also give everybody at least a year off from the sort of interview we get on what I refer to as the Toady programme every morning. I'm afraid we don't have a great view of the BBC. We've never been invited on to Question Time. And personally, I've made several attempts to get hold of the BBC locally with no response. So we might also look at the BBC, but that's more controversial.
Andy Cogan, Green Party. Thank you.
Yes, we wouldn't. You've heard most of the list already tonight, probably. We wouldn't fund tax cuts for the wealthy. We wouldn't fund subsidies for fossil fuel, or nuclear weapons, or arms to Israel, or to totalitarian governments. And we probably wouldn't fund the House of Lords. The House of Lords, everyone there can get £330 a day for being there. That's £260,000 a day if they all turned up. Most of my friends are Boris or something anyway. We'd like to see that stopping funding that. That would save us a fair bit of money. Thank you.
Ryan Coogan, Reform UK.
Yeah, I have to agree with my Green colleague. Definitely stop funding the House of Lords as it currently is. Agree with my Raven Looney colleague. Stop funding the BBC. And obviously going back to sort of more other issues, is I want to stop funding illegal immigrants. I want to stop the boats at source, and I want to ensure that we don't fund those illegal immigrants in our towns and cities across the UK, in our holiday inns, in our Crown Plazas. For me, that is an utter waste of money and totally unnecessary.
Okay, thanks very much. Obi Moon, yours go.
Thank you once again, my lord. I just have a little story to tell. It's about my 6-year-old daughter, and she enjoys having a waffle. So we go out and we buy waffles, and I put it down and then try and control it over the weekend. And last weekend, what happened was she wanted the waffles, and I said to her, "No, you can't have it now. You can have it later." But she insisted, and then I said, "You can have it all. I don't want to fund, the waffles anymore." She got upset, you see, and after she cried and cried. And she made it known to me that she was hungry, but there are other foods there that you can have. The reason why I share this is eventually we agreed that I'm going to get you waffles, and then you're going to have to control it yourself. So with regard to this question, it's all about choice. The money is yours, and you choose how you're going to spend it. And that's what it's all about. It's your money. You will choose what you want to fund. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Charlotte Kane, your go.
The first thing I would stop funding is the Rwanda scheme. It's immoral and it's unworkable. People who come to this country seeking asylum deserve to have their cases decided in this country in proper process, and many of them will then get asylum, and then they can become productive members of our community using their time and their skills and their energy to help the community that's given them asylum. The second thing I wouldn't fund is this daft national service scheme, suggesting that our young people are somehow lazy and not willing to contribute to our society. It's utterly outrageous. They are perfectly decent, constructive, productive members of our society and should be treated with the respect they deserve. And finally, I would stop spending money to subsidise the fossil fuel industry. We need more green energy, less fossil fuel energy.
Sorry, yes, Mike, I was listening. Elizabeth McWilliams, your go.
At the risk of sounding like I'm copying Charlotte, you can read my notes here, and I have also said we would not fund the Rwanda plan. Hundreds of millions have been spent on a gimmick that will not work. One person has returned to Rwanda, and that was voluntarily. If the fear of death on a small boat is not enough to deter people making that perilous journey, then flights to Rwanda will not either. Instead, we will fund working more closely with our European neighbours to set up a border security command with hundreds of new investigators using counter-terrorism towers to go after the gangs. They are the criminals. And also, I would not fund big bonuses going to water companies that pollute our waters.
Thank you. And now, finally, Rob Rawlins, your turn.
Okay, the shocking suggestion that we end abortion. So £100 million spent by the NHS on medical abortions each year. So we would not fund that. So that begs the question, are you just going to leave the people who didn't want their babies to sort of sink rather than swim with all the difficulty they were trying to avoid by having an abortion? Well, certainly we would use that money, and hopefully more, to help women keep babies. Just an example from my life. So my wife and I had a friend one day said, he'd be 17. And we said, what? Who? So she'd had an abortion 17 years before, and her husband had forced her into it. He said, we're not ready for it. No, what? Get rid of the baby? It's you. You choose me or the baby. And so she went along, had the abortion. And so for 17 years, she'd thought of her boy who would be alive at age 17. So there's much hurt from an abortion. We believe in reparations. I mentioned the slave trade. The ending of that involved giving reparations. And so women harmed by abortion and the lies that, oh, it's only a little medical procedure, we would want to give reparations.
Thank you. That finishes question 6. We're moving on now to question 7, where Sarah Collins is going to ask her question. Sarah, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. My name is Sarah. I live here in Ely. I'm an immigrant to this country, but I'm also a UK citizen and a voter. During the 16 years I've lived in the UK, the two main parties and several smaller parties have been desperate to show all the ways they can be tough on immigration. However, every reputable study that's ever been done has shown that, on average, immigrants to the UK contribute more per capita to this country's economy than UK-born workers. But as many immigrants can't vote, they are an easy group for politicians to paint as a primary cause of this country's problems. Do you think immigrants like me make this country a better or worse place to live and work? If I was going to move to the UK in 2024, would I still be welcome?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sarah. I'm going to ask Rob Rawlins, random choice, as the first person to respond.
So I've been involved in helping immigrants in sort of church cafes and drop-in welcome things. I'm an English language teacher to adults, so right now I'm teaching Ethiopians and Iranians on Zoom. So I have a lot of connection with immigrants. This morning in our church we had an Iranian refugee family come. So I have a sympathy for them. My Christian faith causes me to reach out to them. And one, for me, great positive is that certainly most of the immigrants from Christian Africa value life. So they come from worldviews where God's involved. We're in a secular worldview, and so we judge the value of life by the quality of life. And so we're willing to say, well, they're getting very old, not much quality, so let's go for euthanasia, and it's a baby in the womb, and, well, what quality of life is that? And no, we should judge life by its sacred. We call it the sanctity of life. And so many immigrants bring a value of life to this country. May there be more of them.
Thank you. Charlotte Kane, your go.
Yes, Sarah, you would be very welcome if you were to arrive this year. Immigration has strengthened our country for centuries. We've gained a lot from people who have chosen to make this country their home. As a whole, they tend to work extremely hard, they tend to bring new ideas, and they tend to help our economy. They also help our culture. We have one of the most vibrant cultures because we have so many different cultures feeding into it. So I think immigration is generally a good thing. Then you have the issue that we have an ageing population, and we need to make sure that we have people of working age who can help support that ageing population and can help our economy to grow and to prosper. If you go to our hospitals, if you look at social care, you will probably see that there are quite a few people who've come to this country precisely to help us with those services. We do, of course, need to control immigration because we can't have the country filling up, as it were. So there have to be quotas, there have to be skills needs, but fundamentally immigration is a good thing.
Lucy Fraser, your turn.
All my ancestors, whether my grandmother or my great-grandparents on both sides, came to this country fleeing persecution. So I'm a descendant of immigrants, and Britain gave them a home. And I wouldn't be sitting here today, having been the MP for this area, if it hadn't. So I'm very, very proud of our history of welcoming people, particularly those fleeing persecution. Who contribute, who then go on, of course, many to contribute to public life. But it's very interesting because I've been the MP here for over 9 years, and this issue of immigration on the doorsteps, and I knock on many doors, has become more and more of a mainstream issue, and people are feeling more and more affected by it, and particularly illegal immigration. Because when we have illegal immigration, it's simply not fair. Because those people who are entering this country illegally are jumping the queue and taking the place of those people who we would other give safe refuge to. It's also not fair on them because they're taking a very dangerous journey, often with children, and they're risking their lives. And they are paying criminal gangs to bring them over. So they are fueling a criminal network. So that's why we have to tackle particularly illegal immigration. We need to stop it as an international problem, and that's what we've committed to do.
Thank you. Thank you. Ryan Coogan.
Oh, I have absolutely no issue with, with immigrants in our country. I'm a third generation immigrant myself. My family fled persecution and came for a safe passage to Britain. I think personally that immigration puts the great into Britain. My issue is the uncontrollable immigration that we currently have, and the levels are not controlled at all. And you see that when you go outside, there's no housing. Britain is broken. And I strongly believe it's because of the uncontrollable immigration that we have. So I want to freeze non-essential immigration. And by that, it's people that come over to be educated in our country at our great universities. What happens is they then get allowed to bring their family. Well, I think that's wrong. I want the students to come here, but I don't see why Great Aunt Flo has to come as well. I also don't like health tourism. I was in a dental practice the other day and an immigrant come in and said, "This is my mum, she's flown in yesterday, she needs treatment." That for me is wrong. However, it's the illegal immigration that causes the real problem, and £3,000 is given to every illegal immigrant that makes these shores, and that's wrong.
you very much. Elizabeth McWilliams, your turn.
When I heard the Conservatives were increasing the salary floor for partners of those who work in the social care sector, I couldn't quite believe it. I mean, it's an appalling thing to do, but also, why are we trying to make it harder for people to come to this country to work in a sector where we're desperately short of workers? Another thing that I think is terrible is that at the moment we've got so many people stuck in a perma backlog of waiting to hear the outcome of their asylum claims. It's costing the country a lot of money, but it's also a terrible situation for those people. And Labour really want to address that issue. So no, I don't think immigration is a bad thing, and I think we are an open and tolerant country.
Thank you very much. Hooray, Henry, your go.
Thank you. I think there's a real danger that we conflate things here, and I'm delighted that there's been a little bit of splitting of the issues. And I know this is a touchy subject, and I know we've seen a number of parties, if I can put it this way, pushing the vote out, or pushing the boat out around it. We believe that the right people coming here and helping us build this great country cannot be a loony policy, so I'm afraid I can't put that one forward. However, what I would say is, again, managing it, making sure we have people we need, people who want to be here, like you, Sarah, is important. And to help on that, we're actually going to do a bit of a swap around. We're going to swap some Border Force employees for highly trained GP receptionists to dramatically reduce the number of people who really want to come in. That's an important one for us. And while I know it's a touchy subject, again, on the hot topic of the European Court of Human Rights, we're not in favour of it, at least not until there's also a Court of Human Lefts to balance it up.
Thank you. Obi Moni, your go.
Thank you, my lord. Once again, immigration is inevitable and is required for the growth of any nation, especially with how we go about marketing ourselves. So we must work on accommodating people who are attracted to our nation. So one thing what we must do is also not forget to consult the people and find out how they feel about the immigration, and also review what is going on as time goes along. And that's where I stand with that question. Of course, you're very much welcome, because all the hard work, Rome was not built in a day, and it was built by so many different people from different places. Just like the UK was built by immigrants as well. So it's not just the locals, but people who have come and contributed. So you're most welcome here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Obi. Thank you. Andy Cogan, you're the last speaker on this question.
Right. Well, I think everyone in Britain is a descendant of immigrants, aren't we? A couple of years ago, my son had us a special Christmas present, having our DNA analysed, which was a shock to me because it turned out I'm 50% Irish, 25% English, 25% Scottish. My daughter-in-law, it turns out, is 100% Anglo-Saxon. Well, sort of 99% Anglo-Saxon within 30 miles of Hemel Hempstead. Must be unique in many sorts of ways. So we're all different shades of things. The Green Party is very open and porous. We think it's a great strength for Britain to have people from different parts of the world come here and share their talents, skills and knowledge and fill some of the jobs we don't like filling ourselves. I'm told in social care there's currently 150,000 advertised care vacancies. As someone who's getting older and frailer, I can see myself needing care down the line. I want someone to be there to provide that care. So I think we have to say this is, look, overall, there are some bad bits to it. I think the international cooperation on these supply lines of the illegals and how things are managed needs to be worked out with our friends abroad because people have to travel through lots of countries to get here. But many of them are assets to Britain and make Britain a better place, and I'm proud to be British. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Sarah, I hope you felt those were answers, interesting answers. We're moving on to question 8 now. Rodney Richardson, who's got a microphone, but before he does it, I'm just going to say to the organisers that the last question is going to be the next question will be the last question, and I'm going to call Ian Osborne so we get the microphone to the right place. Is that all right? Okay. Rodney Richardson, the floor is yours.
Thank you. The BBC recently published an article stating that English councils currently have a £1 billion shortfall for providing the statutory needs of children with special educational needs. This does not include the cost associated with producing their education and healthcare plans for the thousands of children on the waiting list, or the additional cost of providing those children once they have their care plans. What are you going to do to provide for children with special needs?
Thank you, Rodney. Clearly important issue. Charlotte Kane, your turn.
So you're right, special needs has been massively underfunded for far too long, and our councils struggle, and indeed they have off-the-book debts. So effectively, because they said to the government, we haven't got enough money to deliver what we have to deliver, the government said, well, just sort of push it to one side so it's not too obvious. But somewhere we're going to hit that cliff edge and it needs to be addressed. And of course, at the other end of this money problem are human beings, children who need the special needs, parents who need the support so that they can look after their children with those special needs. So the Liberal Democrats are committed to providing more funding to local councils so that they can give the need that these very important people, these children with special needs, so that they can have their needs addressed, they can have a good education and they can achieve their full potential.
Moving to the other end of the table, Rob Rawlins, your go.
Okay, children with special needs. I said earlier that the measure of civilization of a society is how we treat our most vulnerable. And Britain is wonderful on this. So special needs, that's in the heart of our people. So well done us. But we have a blind spot. We have a blind spot. Let me tell you about Sweden. They're very proud that they've almost eliminated Down syndrome people from their society. How? By aborting them, by identifying them in the womb and then aborting them. Now, mothers and fathers of Down syndrome children in this country are shocked. How dare they treat our children as second class? Can we open our eyes, get rid of the blind spot, and treat babies in the womb, the most vulnerable of our society, as we treat the vulnerable special education needs? Thank you.
Hooray Henry, your turn.
Again, this is a very serious topic and I don't intend to be funny. Really, we need to look at everybody in our communities. We need to think about what we are providing for people. And we need to go for that loony point again about integrated thinking across government and with local councils. Those things are very, very important. Every member of our community is valuable. Every member of our community has potential. And actually, I had a question about this from a potential constituent called Oliver. He's talked to a number of the candidates his response to me saddened me. Apparently mine was the most, or rather the least, loony response. We need to value everybody. We need to think about that, and we need to work out how we fund it. Even if, and it's the one funny bit, it means planting even more magic money trees in order for us to do it.
Lucy Fraser.
I think education is the most important thing, as I previously mentioned. And that's why when I was first elected as your MP, I had a very strong campaign to get more education funding into this area, because we were the 6th worst funded for education when I was first elected. So I campaigned nationally, i.e. with other MPs, to say we needed more funding into the education system, and I campaigned to make sure that East Cambridgeshire got it. Nationally, we now have more money. We have an increase in, we're now no longer one of the worst funded in the country for education. And I got East Cambridgeshire to be specified as an opportunity area. That meant we were identified of having specific funds specifically for us. There's only 12 opportunity areas in the country. There are 650 MPs. But just to answer the very important question on special education needs, because we need to help those people the most. And I just want to respond to what Charlotte said, because warm words simply aren't enough. The county council is Lib Dem run. And I took the person who's responsible for education funding from the county council to government to say we need more money locally. The government gave the county council more money for special education needs on conditions. Recently, the county council has breached those conditions, and I don't think, got an answer as to why that's the case. So yes, we do need more money. I have successfully.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Lucy. Obi Moan.
Thank you, my lord. Once again, it's hard enough to survive as a healthy person without special needs. So education is key to caring for the special needs. Education is important. I mean, those who are educated are able to look after those who have special needs. So in terms of funding, we would look at collaboration, consultation, to make sure that the funding is available for people with special needs and young people with special needs. There is a lot that talking to teachers that I've discovered that needs to happen, including recognition of the great work that teachers and educators do with regards to the special needs. There's a lot that is not said that we need to identify and put out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Obi. Ryan Coogan.
In this area, it's clear that the Lib Dems, that they've broken the conditions of the extra funding that was brought into the area. But it goes stronger than that, because it goes back to the multi-academy trust setup. And in a multi-academy trust, it's underfunded on the standard pupil. So what multi-academy trusts attempt to do is pull in SEN students into the classrooms to boost the funding for the rest of it. But that funding is then not used on that SEN care, and that needs changing. For me, when I look at the funding formula, the SEN is far too underfunded. It needs a substantial increase to actually give those children exactly what they need, not just to float through the academic system, but to actually thrive, rather than being pillaged by multi-academy trusts to actually the rest of the classroom and the rest of those underfunded pupils. But it goes even further than that, because disruption in the classroom, those children need to be removed from the classroom, in my opinion, and actually put into special institutions that can actually cope, like the great one we have here in Ely. But the danger is that the multi-academy trusts keep those children in the school for as long as possible, and in order to gain cash, and that is the problem that needs solving straight away for SEN.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Andy Cogan from the Green.
I used to be a manager in further higher education 30 years ago. A lot of the funding problems date back to when the Conservative government of the time decided to run things like further education directly itself rather than local authorities, where lots of partnerships have been built up, and then reduce the funding. As a manager, we were instructed to reduce all courses from 30 hours a week for our special educational needs to 15 hours a week, and was told this is equality because all the other students get 15 hours a week, that's all anyone's going to get. Every minute taken off those courses was then the community, the family, someone else had to try and pick up the pieces. So get back to my first point I first made in the evening. We need Scandinavian levels of taxation on wealth to put enough money because special education is expensive. One diagnosis can say this child needs £60,000 a year of support. It's vast amounts of money. Only if we tax like Scandinavia will we get near to meeting that and providing it. And that's it.
Thank you, Andy. Elizabeth McWilliams.
Oh, sorry.
You got it?
Yes. Our education and care systems are not meeting the needs of those with special educational needs and disabilities, and we need to take much more of a community-wide approach. Counter to what Ryan said, I would argue we need to improve inclusivity and expertise in mainstream schools. Life is not segregated, and we shouldn't be looking to push people aside in that way. But of course, those with the most complex needs do need to be in special schools that have the right support for them. So school admissions need to take account for the needs of the communities, and all schools must be required to cooperate with local authorities to ensure that that admission system is working. I'd also just like to pick up on something Lucy said about the extra funding she's secured for schools in the area. This may be true, but it's taking with one hand, giving back with the other. All the schools in our area have faced real cuts, year in, year out.
Thank you very much. Right. I'm afraid we've come to our last question, which is by Ian Osborne. The floor is his. He's got a microphone.
Thank you,
Ian,
Chairman. Evening,
you.
panel. My question is this. What do the panel believe will make the biggest difference to our lives in about 20 years' time? And is the General Election campaign engaging with that issue?
Thank you. Elizabeth McWilliams.
I suspect it will be AI. I think it's the biggest opportunity and the biggest threat that we face, and we need to really look carefully at how we manage that. Labour are committed to improving the Online Safety Act, and we need to look at how big technology is using that, and because bad actors use AI. But also AI can be a real force for good. We've seen how it's improved diagnostics in healthcare, and that's something that Labour really want to make more use of, particularly around diagnostics around cancer, reducing rates of cancer. So yeah, I think just like I lived through the digital revolution, I went from playing tapes to where we are now, and I think AI will prove a similarly big change that perhaps none of us are ready for.
Thank you. Ryan.
The biggest thing for me is our economic growth. We have to get it back on track. And there's various ways of doing that. But what I see as a sort of young entrepreneur in this area is there's no schemes available. You come up with a great idea that's at the cutting edge of technologies like crypto, of technologies like AI, and there's nowhere to incubate it. You don't know as a young entrepreneur how to actually move it to the next level. You can't get into focus groups and business centres with anything. I mean, in this area, we've got a business centre. If you don't know about it, you go along and there's a small leaflet that tells you about a little bit of help available. I want to start sort of entrepreneurships in Ely, because we've got some incredible brains here, and actually ride those technologies, because we don't have a Google, we don't have a Facebook, we don't have a Microsoft, we don't have an Apple. All of these companies that create wealth in the local areas, we don't have. They're all creating wealth in California. We need to create that wealth here in Ely, and to do that, we need to harness the ideas of our entrepreneurs with the latest technology and actually ensure that we're not left behind this time.
Thank you, Ryan. Charlotte Kane.
I think the biggest issue has to be climate change. If we haven't met net zero in 20 years' time, then the world is going to be an uncomfortable place to live. This country is going to be an uncomfortable place to live. There will be food shortages, there will be people dying of heat stroke, there will be flooding, it will be appalling. So we have to address that. But to an extent, we've already talked about that. So the second thing, I think, is democracy. I think we're seeing ever lower turnouts at elections. I think we have to re-engage us as politicians with the wider community. We need fair votes so that people are guaranteed that their vote will count. We need to empower local authorities so they can deliver what local people need. And I think if we combine that democratic change with action on climate change, we can be a really strong, powerful, great country in 20 years' time.
Thank you very much. Rob Rawlins, your turn.
How can we expect to do well when we've got blood on our hands of these many, many children? 20 years' time, to turn from slavery, this country took more than 20 years. Education, realizing that slavery wasn't just cheap sugar from the Caribbean on the table, it was slaves suffering. Took a long time. Will be the same to turn this huge moral blot. So education. In science, let's teach our children life begins at conception. Let's teach them that abortion kills. Let's teach them how abortion affects the mother. It abuses the maternal instinct. There's ongoing grief, mental health, and so on. Let's teach them that in science. In the citizenship, let's teach them that about family life and sex belongs in marriage. Let's teach them about the sanctity of life and the ethics of do not kill. Let's teach them the alternatives to abortion, adoption, family support, and so on. I'm talking about 20 plus years. So whichever of you gets into Parliament, please will you look ahead and make little changes in that direction.
Thank you very much. Lucy Fraser, current MP and Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport. Your last go.
Every time I come up with an idea in Parliament, I realise that someone else has already come up with that idea. What we need to do is make systems work, and we need to make them work at every single level. So we need to make sure that charities, philanthropy, local government, national government all work together for our communities and solve the national issues that we face as well. And secondly, I think we need to be proud of this great nation. Often we speak about the United Kingdom and we undersell ourselves. We are a fantastic country. When I speak to other people from abroad, they say, I wish we were more like the United Kingdom. We have world-leading businesses. We're the third biggest technology country in the world, one of only $3 trillion technology countries. We're world-leading music, sport, the Premier League. I think many of you might be spying what's happening in the England game. We have world-leading sport. We lead in film. We recovered from the pandemic faster than any other country, and we are growing at a faster rate than many other G7 countries. We should be proud of our nation, and we should work with other countries across the globe.
Thank you, Minister. Andy Cogan, Green Party.
Well, I'll say it again. I think if we want to be a healthy, wealthy, happy country, we have to be more like the Scandinavians. We need their systems, borrow them, the taxation systems. We need to devolve power properly to local government so they can fund and rebuild our public realm and infrastructure and make it once again something to be proud of. We need to let parish, town and district councils build council houses again at affordable rents to meet local needs for young people, for young adults coming into the adult world and looking for work. We need to invest in our adult continuing and lifelong learning so current and future generations can, at low cost, turn hobbies, interests, enthusiasms into employment, crafts and skills that meet our future needs in this high-tech, AI-driven world. We can do it. Thank you.
Obi Moni, your turn.
Thank you very much, my Lord. Once again, in 20 years' time, I think we need to deal with the governance of our great nation. First of all, the governance encompasses everything to include the environment, the people, and how we interact with each other. We need to listen to the people, we need to listen to the youth, we need to listen to the businesses, and we need to listen to every sector and ensure that every voice is heard. And that way, we can effect the change that we need in 20 years' time. So it's essential that the governance is very, very consultative and effective in implementing the will of the people. Thank you very much.
And finally, the last word goes to Hooray Henry.
Thank you. I know you've all been waiting for one of us to provide a rabbit from a hat. Well, nearest I can get, it's a guinea pig, but there we go. I believe somebody once said, education, education, education. And Ian, if we're thinking 20 years ahead, we're thinking about the education of our children. Whether that's on climate change, entrepreneurship, use of technology, or the arts. And that's really important. I think for us, we also really want to make sure that kids understand their rights and their obligations. So we will require the national curriculum to include democracy, voting, and the way our parliamentary and legal systems should work within that curriculum. And that needs to be extended to all of us through lifelong learning. It's the most important topic for us all. There'll also be mandatory school trips to see the departmental reshuffles that will be undertaken through musical chairs played up and down Whitehall. But the first two items on that curriculum will always be why we need to have none of the above on our ballot papers, and that the only wasted vote is one that isn't used.
Right. Thank you for that. That's it. I'm very sorry we haven't been able to talk about all the things you asked about. There are a lot of local issues to do with begging, water, transport, which we couldn't reach. I apologise. But I think we've had a really, really good session. And my life has been about trying to achieve good government. And I have to say, you are an essential part of it. And the way you manage yourselves this evening and the sense of passion and caring that comes through, I have found very moving. So I personally want to thank you for the way you've behaved. And I want to finally thank the Dean and his team. And I want a round of applause for the cathedral, because they've been a very good home for what we've had today. And that's it. Thank you very much indeed.